Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel, this is Jason, and we are back with our second episode, but third week in the month of May, in which we are talking about stepmothers, evil stepmothers.
Fictional ones.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about real ones. I don't have any experience with that, so.
I hope that all the mothers out there have had a good Mother's Day.
Right.
We didn't say that last week. It was the day before Mother's Day our episode came out. We're now a week after Mother's Day, so yeah, this kind of entire series has been based around me just wanting to honor mothers by talking about kind of the opposite end of the spectrum there, the evil mothers, but as a kind of backwards way of honoring all of the good mothers mothers, stepmothers, teachers, just the ones who have stepped into the gap, that have been that figure for someone. You deserve to be honored, and I hope that you got that this last week. So anyway, this week is probably the thing that I am most excited about, the topic I'm most excited about, because it's Cinderella, and I've always just had a soft spot in my heart for Cinderella. I think that the Disney Cinderella is great, but what really captured my heart as a child was the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella.
From 1965, I think is when that came out.
Is that one that old?
Yeah.
With Leslie
Ann Warren.
Leslie Ann Warren. I know that there was also one with Julie Andrews.
Yes, there was, and that one may be older.
That one previous. I thought that was the oldest one, the 1965.
You're catching me off guard here. I don't know. I know. Anyway. All I know is there was Leslie Ann Warren, and then the Brandy one, and then.
And then that one hasn't been redone.
Yeah.
On film.
Yeah, the animated one was like 1950
but that one
something.
Was, the stage play with all of the music that they just brought and then filmed. And I've seen all three of those versions, and they're all really wonderful.
Good in their own way.
Yeah, every single one just brings, a new life and a new twist on it. But what stays the same is the music, which is really fantastic. And that just, the song In My Own Little Corner, In My Own Little World.
I was playing that the soundtrack on here before you came down.
That was one that I would just sing all the time, because I was a reader and a daydreamer and somebody that really enjoyed just kind of going off in my own little place and, imagining all of the things in the world. So that resonated with me. It still really does.
Okay, if you don't know, she goes around the house sometimes just singing songs from that musical. Mm-hmm. For no reason other than just to be. Just sheer joy, and that's it. And fun. And so that's how I know some of these songs.
But the story is a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. I think that I want to get deeper into the storyline, as well as discussing. Yeah, we're going to discuss the stepmother from Cinderella, but I think that we really kind of also need to discuss just the story. And you were saying that this is a storyline that's popped up in different cultures,
different countries, separated by thousands of miles. Mm-hmm. And there are people that do research into myth and fairy tale and storytelling and how those things interweave. And I didn't do a deep dive on it. I just did a bare skimming, and my eyes started just going, are you kidding me? Because trying to figure out the twists and turns of how this story popped up in so many different places is fascinating to me. But,
to me, I actually think that the most interesting thing about it is how closely interwoven it is with religion. And hot take. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that it is interwoven with man's view of religion and not fully understanding Jesus and what Jesus came to do. And
I didn't know you were.
That.
I didn't know you were going there.
I know you did. I didn't. I did a good job
Kept the secret on purpose.
this week of not like discussing exactly where I wanted to go, because I kind of went, I want to do this on camera, or else I feel like we're just kind of gonna lose a little bit.
Yeah.
If we have the discussion ahead of time.
Before we podcast, sometimes it can.
Yeah, we're bad about
fun,
that.
But it can drain a little bit. So save a little bit.
Yeah.
And she saved it.
But here's the deal. Cinderella resonates with people, both men and women, because the idea is that if you live a good life, that you will receive a reward, right?
Right.
It's this idea, and it's something that does resonate very closely with the Christian faith and with many other religions, because the idea is that even being persecuted, treated unfairly, that if you maintain a good attitude, a humble spirit, if you can keep on doing what you need to do with a smile on your face, with grace, in what you do, just perseverance, faithfulness in the small things, that you will receive a reward for it. That is, that's the hope of Christianity, right? That if we are faithful, that God is faithful to then, even if we don't receive our reward here,
right,
that we have a heavenly reward, right? And that is kind of at its heart the way that every religion has operated. You stay faithful in the small things, in the day-to-day, in the hardships of life, you receive reward. The reason why I said that it's kind of not completely understanding Jesus is because it's a very works-based attitude, and the thing about what Jesus did for us is that he said, I'm going to take you and lift you out of this state that you're in,
right,
based on my goodness, not based on your goodness. And then I will enable you to be good out of love, not out of obligation, right? And so it's kind of, Jesus took that, but it's something that humanity has kind of always understood, and we've always striven for. It was what the Jews were trying to do before Jesus came. They were earning their salvation. It's always been the understanding that when we do this,
you deserve it.
Right, you deserve it.
You earn it, deserve
that's
it.
The message of Cinderella is she was good. She was kind. She was patient. She never repaid evil for evil. She lived this perfect life. You never see her, treating her stepsisters or her stepmother in an unkind, ugly way. And because of that, the prince saw something in her that was different. He saw her beauty, the heart of who she was.
Right.
And he lifts her up out of the ashes and puts her into a palace.
So you weren't the only one that was thinking beauty for ashes, joy for mourning.
Right.
Yeah.
But, that's like, there's a truth there. And it's a universal truth, which I think is why it's such a universally loved story. And it's something that, we do strive for that good. As Christians, we still do, we try to maintain that humility and that beauty and that faithfulness of, no matter what we are, we're trying to represent Christ. We're trying to be, like we talked about last time, the mirror for Him. And yet, it's kind of one of those that I think when we actually live the story of Cinderella, we all hit those moments of going, I failed, I messed up. This is what I was striving for, and then I messed up. I yelled, I screamed, I was lazy. Whatever it may have been. We go, I screwed up, and that means that I have, forfeited my reward. That's the worry, right?
Right.
We go, I no longer deserve it because I screwed up. And the beauty of the Christian faith, beyond all of the other ones, is that it's not based on whether we ever mess up or not.
It's not based upon your works.
Right.
It's based upon his work on the cross.
So even when we fail, we still get that reward. And there's that hope. And there's still that, we have this something to look forward to. We have the kingdom to look forward to.
Right.
Where we're with our prince,
Of
the
peace.
analogy is just so strong, right? The Prince of Peace. So, but in all of that, and I think that, I had never really put together those pieces. I'm sure there probably have been people that have. But when that just kind of all snapped into place, it was like, oh, well, of course this story has been around forever, because this is what everybody has kind of been trying to attain to. This is the ultimate, what everybody wants out of life. This is the only fairy tale, I think, that perfectly sums up what we're all kind of trying to do. Is we're trying to live our lives, be really good, do all of the things, and then receive the reward.
Right.
And there's been pushback against the story from people. From time to time, there are people that don't like the story because they go, oh, well, you should just, be content where you are. People shouldn't be looking for their prince to come and save them. They should save themselves. You get a lot of the retellings that actually focus on that. Well, Cinderella shouldn't just wait for a prince to come, and they think that Cinderella was too passive, and that, they kind of twist the story in that way, where Cinderella actually has a part of saving herself. But ultimately, the heart of wanting to do good and then receive a reward, be recognized for what you've done.
I think they're getting some of that from the Disney movie. Because and I'm looking at just the Perrault version, or Peralta, whatever, and the Grimm's fairy tales version. In those, she just wants to go to the party. Mm-hmm. She's not there the way that the stepsisters are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's two, sometimes there's three. It depends on who's telling the story. But there's always a stepmother, right? So she wants to send them there, and they'll catch the eye of the prince. They have a motive, a goal beyond just going to this. She just wants to go to it. It's not that she really wants to just, be seen, be danced with, but the prince, he notices her not because she's there trying to get saved from him. In fact, she runs away not because of any time. The whole thing has to be back after midnight. The magic goes away. No, she leaves, and she actually she runs away from the prince because he's trying to follow her, and she's like, I don't want him to know that I have a humble beginning. I don't want him to be. So it's basically she's thinking he's going to judge me based upon my humble beginning. So she sneaks in through the roof or something into the pigeon coop, and so that happens like 3 times. So
the thing is you can change the story so many different ways, and yet the heart of being in a kind of desperate place and being recognized for all the good that you do and being pulled out of that still remains the same. Whatever the motivations or the heart are, that they give to the Cinderella, which makes, whoever is there able to be seen in the story.
Yeah.
It works whichever way.
And it's not
whether Cinderella was actually ever wanting to actually fall in love, or whether she just wanted to see, and have a night off to see the beauty.
Yeah.
To be able to see the palace for a little while, to be able to, go to a dance. I've seen some where she was starving and just wanted a meal. She was going for the free food. Like, literally, that's, been some of the retellings that I've read. And this is one that, honestly, I love the retellings of this story, too, because it's just, there's so many different ways that you can take and kind of twist and turn and, the motivations and stuff. And yet it's still that same, the same story that resonates, because the heart of it is do good, be rewarded.
She does have a helper, though, and in the earlier ones,
the fairy godmother,
that's in the Perrault version, but that's not in the Grimm's. The Grimm's one, I think they either took the fairy godmother out, or it predates it and Perrault puts it in.
Interesting.
But in the Grimm's one, it's talking bird, and the bird is in a tree that was made from the first. The father says to Dar, anything you want in the world, I'll get you. And she says, when you're going to work, the first branch that brushes your head when you're coming home to see me, give that to me. And it happens, and he said, the first branch that brushed my head is, I'm coming home to see you, I'm going to give to you. And she plants in the backyard, turns to a big tree over the months that she's under the thumb of the stepmother, and a bird comes and nests in there. And the thing is, the bird is enchanted, of course, because he can talk. And it helps her out later with the whole shoe thing, which is golden, not glass. It's great. But there's a fairy magical element that's in that, whether it's a fairy godmother or even could be the ghost of her or the spirit of her dead mother in another form, whether it be what is it in the Vietnamese when it's a carp? It's a fish.
Which I think is another, really
she has
strong
a helper. That's why I'm getting it.
Theme of, sometimes we just can't do it on our own and we need help.
It helps them make the dress. The bird helps her make a dress. Yeah.
And that is something that, everybody's been in that spot where they go, there's no way, for me to attain what I'm wanting.
Yeah.
And I need someone outside of myself. And that's, a really powerful thing, to just be open to help and to understand what a necessary part of life that is. Whether it be magical help or not. There's been stories written where it's both. Where they take the magical element completely out. There's been, others, obviously. Most of them, I think, have the magical element.
Wait, was the ever after had the, but the magical element was really just the creative energy of Leonardo da Vinci.
Da Vinci, yeah.
Which is pretty magical, if you think about it, but in a different way.
Yeah. But ultimately, even that magic of, having the outfit and getting, a way to go to the ball, that's not the thing that actually changes her life. And, in most all of the stories, it ends up only actually making her situation worse, right? Because she gets discovered, and then the evil stepmother kind of steps up.
Yeah.
What she's been doing, it's become a threat to, we've disrupted the status quo, and so then, in some versions her behavior just becomes worse, in some she gets completely locked away. It just always, that's what kind of amps things up and makes it where it's like, she's in despair, she can't do anything. In the Ever After version, which is the one that we put on our tier list as being the evil stepmother, was the S level stepmother in that one. She sells her to be married to this creepy dude.
Another rich guy. Okay,
well,
so not the prince.
He's somebody that the stepmother has been selling all of the belongings off to this guy. But the guy's kind of been going, yeah, no, but I want Danielle. And so, at that point, she's like, okay, fine. I no longer have any need for you here. before she didn't want to get rid of Danielle because Danielle was working for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she's gone, nope, you've gone past your usefulness. Now I'm just going to get what I can get off of just selling you.
That's what, if you look back at our tier list, that and the physical abuse is what kind of popped her above even the stepmother live action or animated in the Disney. It just ratcheted that up.
Being sold to a man who's going to force you to marry him is a far worse fate than simply being locked in your room.
Yeah.
You know?
Or being forced to work. It's because who knows what you're going to be. Yeah, who knows.
Yeah. But to go, and actually touch on the stepmother in this.
Yeah.
I would say that with Cinderella, just in general, the storyline being something that, every person in some way can resonate with that storyline or see themselves in it in some way, I think that the stepmother in that one is probably the most actual, understandable, or like universal stepmother.
Talking about archetypal. All the other ones just kind of...
I guess it's kind of, she doesn't have the magic. She doesn't have these kind of, one-note flaws. She's more complex, but also kind of universal. She's the most universal, understandable, complex, and yet relatable, I think, to most every person.
Probably because we've seen somebody like that. We've never met magical fairy godmothers, but we've met sometime in your life a woman like this.
So focused on their own beauty that they're willing to kill anyone that, is beautiful or more beautiful than they are. That's not really a relatable thing.
It happens, but it's so rare that you don't. But
somebody that's that focused on their beauty, it's like, okay, sure, that's, understandable, but it's kind of so over the top that it's like we can't see that ever being something that, could happen to us. Whereas this stepmother that, she manages to step up the evil, but at the beginning it's kind of just like, okay, so she just wants her girls to be kind of treated a little bit better, maybe, in a lot of the stories you see that, she was disappointed by the relationship between her husband and his daughter, where he...
And also the previous mom.
Right.
As well, the way that she was treated.
She kind of comes into this marriage and
that.
She doesn't receive, the treatment that she feels like she should have. Maybe she's not loved as well. She's not spoiled as much. A lot of times you see the father still treating his own daughter in a, with favoritism.
Yeah. He's
giving her all of the special treatment and the pet names, and, they have the special relationship.
Yeah.
Which, it makes sense that this is a little girl who's lost her mother and she still needs that relationship with her father. But you can see it from the stepmother's perspective of how she's going, why are my girls not being treated the same way as his girls are? They should all be treated equally.
Right.
And her then wanting to push back on that and go, well, my girls were not treated as well, so now I'm not going to treat you as well. She's just, you kind of almost see it as she's just trying to balance it out, right? But then she takes it too far. She's bitter. She's then, she becomes a widow. She doesn't have enough money to survive. It's like there's a lot of things that could make her a little more relatable and just kind of understanding where the bitterness came from and why she then goes to the, treat Cinderella the way that she does. It doesn't make it right, obviously.
Bitterness, favoritism, ambition, treating, picking, if said favoritism, but picking winners and losers. And we've seen real people do these things. These are not just, larger than life characters. We've seen real people do these things in the modern realm. So that's how it's relatable, not because we felt the same.
And when you have a situation
emotions.
like this little girl is beautiful and my girls aren't, I need to find a way to balance that out so that my girls actually get something. Is it wrong? Yes. Is it understandable? Yeah, it kind of is. You can see where someone would go to that point and go, even though you shouldn't have gone there, I understand how you went there. And that's, and that way I'm going, she's kind of the most relatable, understandable villain of all of these. But, I feel like a lot of times there's such a variation in how villainous she goes.
Right.
That, it's not the same as with Cinderella, that it's just like Cinderella's just universally loved. It's like, the stepmother is going to be maybe understandable in some of these stories and then completely not understandable in others. So, and then, even Disney took the stepsisters and actually gave them kind of a redemption arc. So, when
was that? Which
in the Cinderella 2 and 3.
Dreams Come True and Twist in Time.
Yeah, the Twist in Time.
Twist in Time is the third one.
The one that they really focus on. I think it's Drizella that gets her. She gets the fairy godmother's wand, and she, is like
changes
she changes
the
past, and then like she regrets that, and she and Cinderella actually have a moment of, understanding and talking together at the end. And it's been a little while since I've seen that one, but.
And the stepsisters get their own, I think, book. The same guy who did Wicked did a thing with them, and
there have been a lot of retellings that have focused around the stepsisters.
Any characters that they feel don't get their due, or that they feel like they get portrayed a little one note, they kind of try to not necessarily redeem them, but give them a little more depth. And it's a hit or miss sometimes when you do that, because you can uplift a villain a little too much.
One of my favorite books that I've read in the past year was actually a story from one of the stepsisters' view, where the stepmother's still evil. However, Cinderella herself is actually very manipulative and not a good character. So you end up seeing,
wow.
Which not many stories, not many retellings will actually do that. But that one was actually fun, and it made it where it's like, everybody's kind of praising Cinderella, and you've got it because it's starting the story after Cinderella's, in the palace with the prince and everything, and then but anyway,
that's good.
There's some great retellings out there of this one, but all in all, the stepmother, I think that at the same time that we can all see what we want out of life in Cinderella, I think that we can all understand how the stepmother got to be where she is. And I think that in that, it's more of, a cautionary tale than any of the other ones, because, you can learn from where she allowed herself to go and what bitterness and ambition, the dangers that those are to just, in the end, it's like, it's so sad, because if she had just not interfered, if she had treated Cinderella the same as her daughters, if she had actually just been a good stepmother, the chances that Cinderella and the prince would have gotten married and she would have been able to go live in the palace and, had her life completely changed for the better, which she wanted that. You see that ambition of she wants her daughters to be the ones that, she ends up still being, she gets what she wanted. She was in a position of authority, but because of the way that she treated Cinderella, she loses all influence.
You lose everything.
Yeah, and a lot of the stories, she ends up being punished. She ends up, being sent away, to do whatever. But she gets, a just reward for her treatment. Whereas it's like, if you had just not, been evil, you would have gotten what you wanted. And that's the most sad thing of all. It's like, you still could have had everything.
That happens often in fairy tales is goodness and kindness, even from the most humblest of person, and also cleverness is rewarded, mm-hmm. and things like selfish ambition and cunning trickery many times is punished. Wickedness is punished. Mm-hmm. So when you're telling these stories to children, you're kind of uplifting some basic morality tales. Again, it's not as in depth as the spiritual nature of the Bible, but it's I think it's in a way for somebody to uplift morality and virtue, and tell stories that can be repeated again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I feel like in a lot of ways, the story, that's one of the things about Ever After, is they present it as a true story, whereas most of the other retellings, it's like, oh, this is a fairy tale, this is a fiction. There's magic. There's
a pumpkin.
Things that are completely not believable.
Talking mice.
Yeah, but I really do feel like this story has probably been lived by people in one way or the other, many, many times. It's a very believable, real story.
Well, but the other side of that is, some people they don't like someone to get to think that they're just going to be saved out of their poverty or out of their mistreatment. And sometimes there are situations in life where in this life, the person who is wicked is not always repaid. They're not punished in this life. And you have to make your choice and go, am I just going to wait for someone to swoop down and do all that? Or am I going to be good and kind regardless of my situation? But there's a thing in us that wants to see good rewarded on this side, mm-hmm. of reality instead of, beyond.
But that's also where you have Christianity that's going, you will get a reward, even if it's not here on earth, we do have that reward to look forward to in heaven.
In this world, you will have tribulation, but I've overcome it.
Cinderella teaches hope.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about other stories that kind of have emphasized that hope, like A Little Princess, which is kind of a Cinderella story, right?
Yes.
But that common theme of just going, no matter what you're facing, no matter what trials you're going through, you are allowed to hope. Like, it's okay. It's actually a good thing. And I think that if anything that we get out of Cinderella, the story, it's permission to dream, to hope. And, that's kind of one of those that I've always kind of gone with my girls, because I remember having discussions with them about, how people were saying that Cinderella was unrealistic and it was, wrong. And me just going, no. It's okay to dream, but don't put your dream as necessarily, your dream doesn't have to be, oh, I live in a castle and I get married to a handsome prince.
Right.
That's where it's like, okay, that's not going to be for everybody. Not everybody can marry the prince. Not everybody's going to live in a castle, But dreaming that something good is going to happen, it doesn't mean that you have to go from poverty to wealth. but going from not being treated well to being loved and seen for who you are. Now that's something worth dreaming of, you know? The important part of Cinderella was not rags to riches. The important part of Cinderella was neglect to love.
Yeah.
And, that's where when we look at the stepmother as being kind of, one of the most important parts of this show, or of this story, sorry, we go, she represents everything that Cinderella was missing in life. The fairy godmother, the fact that she's a godmother, I kind of love. We talked about how in Snow White, Snow White didn't get another mother. She didn't get another father. She got the 7 dwarves.
7
she
short
got
bros.
Friends.
7 short kings.
And that's a good thing, I think. But at the same time, in Cinderella, we get kind of a mother figure, somebody that was coming in to give her something that she was lacking. She's giving her, she's providing for those needs, the basic needs, but also giving her the ability to dream. And then, the means to actually start making those dreams come true.
And did you notice that and this is true of anything based off the Disney thing or the musical, is that it's the mundane things of life. Just a pumpkin or mice. They become coachmen or horses, and the pumpkin becomes a stagecoach. So the mundane thing of life is somehow uplifted. And, your rags that you're wearing right now, let's uplift those. And let's add a little magic to that. So it's almost like you're taking, this is just the everyday thing, but I'm looking at it a different way. Now in that, the magic truly it is transformative. If you look at the mundane things of your life and just transform them in your mind, they're uplifted just by changing your perspective.
Which is one of the reasons why I loved the Rodgers and Hammerstein version so much. Because of that song, in my own little corner, in my own little corner, in my own little chair, I can be whatever I want to be.
Yeah.
On the wings of my fancy, I can fly anywhere, and the world will open its arms to me. She's saying, I can create magic here in my imagination. I don't have to live in the actual state that I'm in. I can dream and I can fly anywhere. And, this thing here becomes, this magical thing. So she's already kind of participating in that. So the next step of this pumpkin and these mice and, becoming transformed is just kind of continuing on what she's already been doing. And that messaging is really strong in that version. And yeah, I love that. But I don't know, have we discussed the stepmother enough?
I think we've covered a lot of that. Yeah. One thing I don't understand though, in the Grimm's fairy tale one, the prince has each one of the stepsisters try on the golden shoe, the slipper, and they have to do things to fit their foot in the shoe. And he just goes, I guess this is the one, and takes them until the bird says, no, see, there's little drops of blood coming out of the shoe. So he goes back, and I'm like, was the prince ever looking at Cinderella's face at all? And he was just looking down at her feet the whole time? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a fairy tale, and there's repetition, and it's fun. It's a little dark.
I think that there's a lesson that can be taught from that too, of how
pay attention.
Pay attention for the prince, but then the stepsisters, they're breaking their feet,
trying to forcing
or bleeding.
Yeah.
It's like, how far are you willing to go to try and take something that doesn't belong to you?
Right.
That's not rightfully yours.
You're forcing something that should not be forced.
It's just kind of, this idea of there's no way that they could pull that off. They were trying to be something that they weren't.
Yeah.
And that caused them pain, agony, and ultimately it didn't get them what they wanted. There's just no way to try to force that, I think, is, the ultimate lesson there. And every single thing, every single action in these story, these fairy tales had these lessons that could be drawn out. And yeah, I don't know. I think that this is a good one for so many reasons. I think that this is one of the, again, all of these stories that have truth in them, they may not directly point to God, but when there's truth in them, you can so easily take that and, go, yeah, here's how it connects. Here's how it points to God.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I love about fairy tales so much, is just that, you can point people to Jesus. You can point people to God, because there's this truth, that's running through it, that it's like, yeah. And here, if you feel like Cinderella and you feel like you're trying to earn your reward and you're looking for this hope for your future, all of the things that that you should have, because Cinderella should have been safe in her own home. She should have been loved. She should have been fed. She should, just the basic necessities that she was deprived of.
And it shouldn't make her just the help.
Right.
I mean, people can be helpful in a home, but she was made to be, even the lowest level.
Ultimately, what she needed was to be loved by her stepmother, and that was the thing that her stepmother didn't give.
Yeah.
She did not love her. And, all of the neglect and abuse and the bad things that the stepmother did came from just, she was incapable of loving this child. We see that, she didn't necessarily treat her own daughters well, but she tried. When mothers are flawed, when they've maybe not been treated well themselves, a lot of times it's like you're trying to then learn how to love your own children. And as mothers, we don't always do that perfectly, but she didn't even try to love Cinderella. She tried to love her own daughters. She didn't try with her stepdaughter. And that's the saddest thing of all. But, for Cinderella, it's like she deserved something more. She deserved love. And, the things that she was deprived of. And like I was saying, if you are feeling like you're missing out on kind of the most basic things that you need in order to survive, then it's okay to hope and it's okay to dream. And yet, it's like, this is where not the fairy godmother enters the story. This is where Jesus enters the story. And, a lot of times we end up just going, that prayer for give us this day our daily bread. And the reward may not come here in this life. We may not get the riches and, everything in our life turning around, but we get what we daily need. And the promise of that future reward. Because it's like it's there for every believer. It's that eternity in heaven with Christ. So, anyway. Anything more to add?
A dream is a wish your heart makes when you're fast asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Just thought you might want to know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to wrap that up there, and we'll be back next week to discuss.
Did you say Rapunzel?
I didn't. I was waiting for you to say it.
Rapunzel. Rapunzel.
Yes. we're going to come back and discuss Rapunzel. And that's going to be a fun one, too.
And as a balding man, I'm definitely going to have some hair envy.
Okay.
Because my blonde locks have gone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate you.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.